Yeah, walked the dog, gamed a little, played a little frog.
What does your morning commute sound like?
Hi, welcome to McDonald's.
Can I get a sausage McMuffin with egg and a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, please?
Kids back up, went back home, and I went to...
Here you go, Jim.
Here's to making your morning routine a little better. Right now, mix and match 2 select breakfast sandwiches, like a bacon, egg, and cheese McGriddles, a sausage McMuffin with egg, or a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit for just $4. Breakfast at McDonald's. Single item at regular price at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Hey, Touch 'em All listeners, it's Derek Wetmore with a quick heads up. We had to go to our backup audio recording device this week, and you can tell in the sound quality. But Phil Mackey and I talked Twins changes and some changes at 1500 ESPN. Hope you enjoy the episode, and we'll talk with you again soon.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed saying touch 'em all. Way back and done! Touch 'em all, Joe Mauer! And now these guys are making it relevant to this year's Twins.
Now, our 2 resident hardball nerds will attempt to touch 'em all on the week's news surrounding the Twins in MLB. Here's Phil Mackey and Derek Wetmore.
Hey, everyone. Touch 'em All podcast. Derek Wetmore with Phil Mackey. Phil, the first time we've done a podcast together in how long did you say?
So we've done radio stuff, but this is the first time we've sat down in weeks to do a Touch 'em All episode. So apologies and we're live on Facebook right now too. Not that that matters for those of you listening retroactively on this podcast feed, but to those on the podcast feed and to those on Facebook Live, we feel bad that we haven't been dominating this feed more regularly this summer. But there's just been a lot of changes and things happening at 1500 ESPN, and just a lot of shifting and building, and we can dive into some of this, but it's taken away not just my attention span from this podcast and also doing a 4-hour radio show, but it's taken away your attention span.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that we can get back on the regular recording schedule here, if not starting right now, sometime very soon.
Well, I've been telling people for a while, and there have been a number of people who've stuck with us and continue to send us notes throughout this sort of hiatus. Isn't quite right, but you know what I mean. Like, we've scaled back. We've throttled down. And I sincerely appreciate all of that continued support and the questions. Even if people are a little mad, I like that. Like, where are you on this podcast? I ran into somebody at a podcast taping at Lynn Lake, actually. And they said, yeah, I really like your guys' podcast, but I'm worried that I haven't seen an episode in however long. And I said the same thing to him that I've said to a number of people that I'll say again here. Then, Phil, I'll let you address some of the changes, and then we'll talk some Twins, because that's what the people are owed after a long summer. I said, so the changes that you heard about, it's daunting and you may be concerned about what's going to happen next. I can tell you that as a Twins fan, I think you are going to like what's coming next. I think when we unveil a new lineup in the fall, I think you're going to be happy with the throttling down of the content. I can tell you the Touch 'em All podcast is going to be a more regular feature of the staff that we have. There's going to be more Twins stuff than what you're used to this summer. So I think it's going to be good for people who like this stuff. But it's change, it's different, it's new, and it's weird. And let me hand over the microphone to you, Phil, and say, you're captaining this ship now. What do the people need to know that they don't know already?
Has anyone ever thought that maybe that's a terrible idea and that that's just a huge mistake that I am now captaining this ship?
You don't think anybody ever thought that?
So I am the acting program director at 1500 ESPN right now as we transition out of this legendary era of Joe Suchere and Patrick Royce, and their last radio shows are going to be on September 7th. I'm sure a lot of people have heard this stuff already, but their last radio shows on AM 1500 are going to be on September 7th, which is a week from today, if you're listening on this Friday. Starting the Monday right after that, Joe Suchere will still do Garage Logic. And it might sound a little bit different. It might not. It's for him to sort of determine and for him to paint on a blank canvas. But Joe is going to be available daily on the podcast feed that you've already found him on. So you can GarageLogic.com is a good place to find it starting next week, and anywhere you would find podcasts. And Patrick is still going to be a contributor on our show, Mackey and Judd. We're going to have more to announce about the timing of Mackey and Judd next week sometime. and also some other 1500 ESPN related announcements. But we're going through this transition phase, and we hope to have some content announcements later on this fall, beefing up digital content, beefing up brands like Touch 'Em All. And we're excited. We're in kind of planning phases right now, and so why I haven't been as active on the Mackey and Judd show or on Touch 'Em All, it's just because there's a lot of things that need to be done behind the scenes and a lot of work that needs to be done in planning. And long story short, when you're an AM radio station in 2018, which is primarily what our business is here at 1500 ESPN in the now and over the past 8 years, it's really, really hard for that to succeed on its own. It's just, AM radio isn't dead, but AM radio is not the viable business model that it used to be even 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. The only thing that I think will be addressed more in the future, except just the shows like themselves that we'll talk about, but like what I keep telling my friends, and when people are asking me what's going on, what's new, what's different, it's like, oh, the radio station's going away. And that's not true. Mm-hmm. That part has been overblown and overplayed, whatever. But what I keep telling people is that when we sort of resurface, it's going to be more than just a radio station. Mm-hmm. It's still going to be sports. Some of the same people you've been used to. We're adding staff, but more than just a radio station is kind of the crutch line that I've fallen back on when my friends and family ask me about it.
It's true. It's the analogy I use when it comes to the business that we work in. And I don't know, maybe some people are just sitting here like, shut up and talk Twins. And I get that.
What do you think about Chris Gimenez?
Yeah, and
we'll get to Chris Gimenez.
And I get that. And so this is sort of a self-indulgent episode for us because we want to flush this out and explain to people. And again, we will have more to announce going forward. I wish we could sit here today and say, all right, here's what's going to be happening over the next several months and maybe the next several years. We'll get there at some point. But on the business model end of this, because ultimately, as much fun as it is to play radio and to play podcast, I mean, these are money-making businesses that if you don't produce or if the model doesn't produce anymore, well, then big changes have to happen. And so I would say for a long time, AM radio has been on the downslide in terms of total audience and total popularity as digital forms of content consumption have popped up. And so as that graph has gone down and down and down, it's not just in the Twin Cities, it's across the country. If you're not also fortifying the other ways in which people could consume your content, you're in a really tough spot. And I think 1500 ESPN, I think we've done a good job with podcast networks and written content. I think we've realized that we just need to be more aggressive in those areas if we want to keep entertaining people and if we want to keep pushing forward and doing what we do for a living.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you and I have recognized that a little bit, and that's part of the reason why we've launched things like Touch 'Em All, and Sports Over Beers was actually the first podcast we launched a few years ago. But
good times.
Hubbard's an innovative company, and Hubbard's actually one of the most successful and growing radio companies around the country in 7 different markets. And they're just trying to look at the matrix differently than they have in prior years when it comes to local sports and 1500 as a radio brand. So. Yeah. I guess I'll just wrap this, and you can speak to this to whatever degree you want to, but we feel bad that we haven't been more active on Touch 'Em All, like we said. We will have more to announce on the content front in the near future. We love entertaining you. We love annoying you. Whatever it is that you get from us, we love engaging with you as an audience, and we hope that the engagement will only grow, even if we might have to take a chill pill here for the short term.
Yeah.
We hope that long term we're going to be able to provide some pretty cool things.
Yeah, I'd echo all that. I'd say that not only the podcast, but also columns and articles and stuff like that. I've been busier doing office stuff than I expected to be, frankly, over the summer. People around Target Field ask me, like, where you been? It's like, I really don't have a good answer. That I wish that some of this other stuff, didn't overwhelm Twins coverage. So there's this like weird feeling of guilt that I have. I don't know if you have the same, like you've been off the radio off and on a lot over the last 3 weeks. Yeah. I don't know. I feel a certain sense of like remorse for being away from it, but I will say 3 specific audiences of people that have been awesome throughout all of it. My Facebook crowd on my Facebook page, Derek Wetmore MLB for podcast listeners. the podcast crowd who interact with us on any social media, and then people who are on my newsletter emailing me, whether it's support or just questions or how you doing, all that stuff. It's been phenomenal. I don't know how I returned those favors paid through the summer, but it's been a weird time, honestly. Just as bluntly as I can put it, it's been weird at work for a couple of weeks, really, maybe even longer than that. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to sort of turning the page, getting excited about what's next, what's fresh, what's new, what we're going to be doing, and really throttling down on some more Twins and other sports coverage too.
Yes, and just to add one more thing here too, if you have questions or thoughts, if you have ideas about what you'd love to see more of or less of, I think we can use Twitter as kind of a public discussion forum here. At Derek Wetmore, at Phil Mackey, whether it's right now or in a week. We're open for business and we're open for engagement. So, you want to talk some Twins here?
I really, really do. Yes.
Okay, we'll talk some Twins in just a moment. But I want to tell you about my favorite car dealership and service department for just a second. Luther Brookdale Toyota has been part of my family for 30 plus years. 694 on Brooklyn Boulevard. And right now, with 2019 models coming in, that means they've got to get rid of the 2018. So you get to take advantage of great deals on some of the best vehicles in the world right now, like the 2018 RAV4 or Camry or Corolla. There are 600 2018 brand new models on the lot right now, and you can get $2,500 rebates. You can get 0% financing on a lot of those different models. So stop in, 694 Brooklyn Boulevard. Tell them you're a Twins fan. Tell them you listen to the Touch 'Em All podcast. They'll probably complain about payroll or something, but you know what? Because you listen to Touch 'Em All, you know that payroll is not the limiting factor that some of these people, these evil payroll pipers, would like you to believe. 694 Brooklyn Boulevard and LutherBrookdaleToyota.com.
This is Stephanie March, food editor of Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, and fellow foodies, it's the most wonderful time of the year, the Minnesota State Fair. And not only are foods on a stick, I'm bringing you a podcast on a stick. It's a show released daily during the run of the fair, covering the fair's best of the best, the must-eats, the new foods, the old favorites, plus events, hidden gems, and the shows you can't miss. We're going to cover it all. Just listen to Podcasts on a Stick. Find episodes on the Podcast One app or wherever you find your podcasts.
So, Phil, there's a big earth-shattering seismic activity level trade the Twins made yesterday. I was actually sitting in your office when it happened, and I wrote it up. I wrote 4 paragraphs on it. And that was the high wattage swap of backup and injured catcher Bobby Wilson to the Cubs for a postseason run for once and future Twin Chris Gimenez.
Is this to the Chicago Cubs or the Iowa Cubs?
It was the Chicago Cubs, and he's going to be a part of their postseason run in some capacity. We can talk about it from a Cubs perspective. I'm more interested in it from a Twins perspective. Chris Gimenez is back with the Twins. Your thoughts?
So this is interesting. It's clearly not for baseball reasons. He's 35 years old. There's 1 month to go in the season. In the 15 games or whatever he played for the Cubs this year, he batted $130. It was putrid. In the 2.5 months he played for the Iowa Cubs, he batted .204. And we're not talking power numbers to go along with it, like Joey Gallo might give you. So he's cooked. It's safe to say that Chris Gimenez, as a big league caliber player, is cooked. Chris Gimenez, on the other hand, as a clubhouse leader, as maybe a player morphing into more of a coach role, I think there's a lot of intrigue there.
Yeah.
I do think it speaks to either the state of the clubhouse or maybe the lack of overall leadership, that they felt the need to bring Matt Belisle back in off the street and also Chris Gimenez.
Yeah.
So this might be Derek Falvey and Thad Levine saying, yeah, you know what, we just we lack in the leadership department in this clubhouse, and so we just need a couple better fortifying veteran presences here, especially when winning is not what's happening in 2018. But I could see Chris Gimenez, maybe they bring him in here for a month and he transitions into either a major league coaching role or some sort of minor league managerial role. I think this is building blocks for the future. And having him in the organization, from everything that I've gleaned, and you've been around him more than I have, it would not be a bad thing to have him in the organization behind the scenes.
You know who he reminds me of, and I didn't cover this guy, but it's like a Mike Redmond where you've never met somebody who doesn't like Chris Gimenez.
And he's just constantly naked in the batting cage.
No, not that part of Mike Redmond. The always smiling, bad days, good days, doesn't matter, same guy, positive energy. And it sounds like, I will say this, that there was one big disagreement that I had with social media this year. There are maybe several, but one of the big ones was, like, Matt Belisle should be cut on a losing team. And I don't think that's true, even though I see the same Matt Belisle on the mound that you guys see, because for whatever reason, if you felt like the clubhouse needed some steadying on a team that wasn't going to win, and the primary goal is developing players for 2019 and beyond, you could do worse than to have that sort of presence. And Jimenez brings that. Bobby Wilson brought that, absolutely. So it's not like they're trading a bad guy for a great guy. They're trading a great guy for a great guy. And possibly, too, I haven't seen this. I haven't read any of the clips yet today. More office work, surprise, surprise. But one of the things that I thought when I saw this trade was good for them for honoring Bobby Wilson, what he gave to them this year. He didn't do much with the bat, but he was a well-respected guy in the clubhouse. Really hard not to like that guy.
Yeah.
Rates well defensively. They like him behind the plate, his game calling, his leadership in those areas, guiding young pitchers through their starts and things like that. To now put him in a spot for a postseason run, I think that's a pretty big tip of the cap.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, I was like, poor Chris Gimenez.
You know, Chris Gimenez.
Poor Chris Gimenez.
On a different note, yeah, it is.
He was going to make a postseason run.
Would he have been? I mean, would he really have been their backup catcher though? He would. I guess he would have gotten a ring because he still might get a ring because I guess he was with the organization.
Yep.
You know, Chris Gimenez, top 5 all-time unbuttoned jersey guy.
Yeah. Yes.
Like if you're thinking about guys in the major league who
Gabe
just
Kapler,
want to put it all out there, 3 or 4 buttons undone,
Jose
maybe a
Canseco.
deep V-neck undershirt.
We should put that asterisk.
Mike Napoli,
best clean unbuttoned shirt guy, because we could go on and on down that list of guys who are
clean
just
shaven or
no, whose pecs might have just been bursting the buttons off of their shirts. Because Mark McGuire wore the Oakland A's like medium shirt in the late 90s.
Sammy Sosa would give you a little too with the elastic sleeved pinstripe Cubs jersey.
A little bit different. I see a lot of questions on Chris Gimenez here. I think honestly a fairly low wattage trade. I'll be curious to see what you think, Phil, about or what you said, how that plays out, if he gets some sort of role with the organization going forward. But let's be honest, like for 2018, this move means next to nothing for the Twins and their win total.
Yeah.
Sneaky, this club could finish at or near 500.
I'm on the record in our Mackey and Judd Write That Down segment.
Okay.
I've got them finishing 500
All
or
right.
above.
Okay.
So what are they right now? They're probably like 6
standings.
or 7 games under right now, but it's unlikely at this point because there's only 1 month to go. But they've got a bunch of games.
Actually, they're 9 games under, but
they are now. Okay,
pretty
so
easy
that's
September schedule.
They got it to within 5 at one point about a week ago.
We'll see. So much of it depends on who continues to play for the whole season, or if it's just straight up audition time. So I don't really have any other questions that I see here on Jimenez, but got a ton in the Facebook chat, and hopefully we answered all of them here. The other one that I have, Twin stuff, and that maybe we can get into if there was anything you wanted to specifically hit on today, Phil. Somebody asked us about Kyle Gibson and his future with the Twins. Do you want to tackle that? I've got a quick thought and then maybe a quick touchdown.
Sure. I also think we forgot to hit record on the Zoom H6, so we might just have crappy podcast audio. But
I'm not sure. We'll see.
If that's the case, we'll be whatever. But Kyle Gibson, I'm intrigued. I am intrigued to see him in a Twins uniform next year. I also wouldn't be shocked if they shopped him. If they thought, okay, and I don't know, I'd love to know how much they tried to shop him at the trade deadline a month ago. Because you have to make a decision here. Is he a guy at age 30 that you want to lock into until he's 33 or 34? You know, are you gonna get to the end of the year and then make him a qualifying offer or a contract extension? They haven't. If they weren't interested in Eduardo Escobar and Brian Dozier contract extensions, and those guys are around the same age, I don't know why to me, Kyle Gibson would be third on that list between those three. Maybe second behind Eduardo Escobar and then Dozier third. So I could see them shopping him just to try and get value before the last year of his contract starts. And they think about it. Right now they've got Fernando Romero, Jose Barrios, Jake Odorizzi is still in the organization. Michael Pineda is going to start, right? So could they trade Kyle Gibson and open up a spot for a free agent signing? Or, I don't know, at this point, Steven Gonsalves is not going to be a starting. You're not going to give him a spot in the starting rotation. So, I don't know, I'm rambling here, but I think Kyle Gibson did turn a corner. I don't think it's a fluke, but I also didn't think that means you have to lock him in for $40 million and ride him until he's into his mid-30s. If this outburst in his career had happened when he was 26 or 27, you'd feel great because he'd have multiple years left of team control, or if he was becoming a free agent, you'd feel more comfortable signing him until he was 31 or 32 than signing him until he's 35.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
He'd be first on that list for me, Escobar, Dozier, Gibson in terms of contract extension. And if he wanted to do 3 years and $40 million, I would do that right now. But I don't know what
that'd be at that price, I'm in.
It's not aggressive. I'm in.
But I'm thinking if you're, I don't know, who knows what he's going to get. I'm thinking it's more like $15+ million a year. If guys like Ricky Nolasco were getting 12, 13 million 4 years ago.
Right, he's in that mid-rotation starter price bracket. And when those guys become free agents, they become expensive. So the short answer to the question is, what's his future with the Twins? Well, he has another year of club control left, so he'll get an arbitration raise or a contract extension and be with the Twins next year. Or he'll be traded, or you could do this, but you wouldn't. You could non-tender him, and then he's a free agent, but you just gave up one of your good starting pitchers.
Yeah.
Kyle Gibson last year made a change with his fastball that I pointed out in August, and everyone said, you're crazy. Kyle Gibson can't pitch. Cut him yesterday. And his last, I think it was like 10 or 11 starts last year. He was a really good pitcher. He's continued to be that sort of mid-rotation, solid starter. Not a million strikeouts. And he's still going to have his games where you're like, what are you doing? You should be better than this. But the total body of work over the last calendar year, he's been great. And the Twins are lucky to have him at the price that they have him at.
I feel so much better, even if Gibson, well, let's say Gibson's in for next year.
Yep.
Then I feel even another notch better about their starting rotation than almost any other aspect of the team. Now, I love the fact that Royce Lewis is on the horizon, and they've got Eddie Rosario in the mix long term here in the outfield. But really, you don't feel super comfortable with more than about 2 or 3 position player spots right now because Miguel Sano is a question mark. Byron Buxton, who we should transition into here, is a huge question mark. You feel like the starting rotation, you're definitely going to get by with Jose Barrios, Kyle Gibson, and then Fernando Romero going into his second year, right? I mean, that's a good place to start as you're pushing forward.
I'm good with the rotation. Those aren't the 3 guys I'm starting with, but like your point is sound that everyone, the depth that you have there in that sort of 5, 6, if you have a bunch of 6 starters, you don't have a good rotation, but I legitimately feel like next year the Twins could be poised to have 1/2 with Barrios, and then a bunch of 2, 3s, and then a bunch of 4, 5s. Like that's a pretty good spot to be in objectively.
Yeah, and Michael Pineda is another wild card because
I'd put Pineda in before I'd put Fernando Romero in. I want Romero in the bullpen.
Even without seeing extend. Well, I mean, if he's healthy, I'm with you. Well, the thing is, 7 years ago, Michael Pineda was one of the 5 best starting pitchers in the American League, and now several surgeries later on different parts of his arm.
Huge question mark.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But then you look at what he did with the Yankees, and it's hard. That's such a tough ballpark to pitch in. It's a tough city and environment to pitch in. How much can you extrapolate even from his time with the Yankees, where he was fine. He wasn't what he was in Seattle. It's such an unknown, and I think there's a lot more positive on the horizon than negative, especially if he's healthy.
He's one of the best bets to outperform his contract. He's going to be making $8 million next year. Yeah. That's for the stats nerds out there. Like, you're paying him to be a 1-win player. That's easy. Yeah. I think he easily clears that bar. Jose Barrios, though, unless he gets some contract extension this winter, which he should, but he might not. He's a pretty good bet to outdo his contract.
Have they already gone to Barrios at all, even before this year, with one of those 7 years? Okay.
I don't know if it was 7 years. I don't have the numbers.
One of those little team-friendly situations.
Talk about, the same thing the Indians tried to do with Francisco Lindor. Hey, Lindor was like $1 million or $100 million, which you're not going to pay to Barrios. But
now Lindor is how many players in baseball are more valuable than Lindor? So betting on himself was the right.
Yeah, I would say so. But also good on the Indians for trying to get that surplus value locked in. But I don't know. The Twins did that with a handful of young players last winter, and nobody got it done.
I'm curious. Tyler Austin. I know that Lance Lynn has actually been really good for the Yankees, but to trade 2 months of Lance Lynn for a guy who was the Yankees' starting first baseman at the beginning of the year, partly due to Greg Bird's injury, but Tyler Austin is a really intriguing figure here. In the middle of his prime, he's never going to be this high batting average, and he might even just be a platoon guy, especially if Mauer comes back. But the fact that you're able to get rid of 2 months of Lance Lynn and bring on not only a pitching prospect of interest, but a guy who might start at first base for you next year, depending on how things shake out.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
I mean, the Yankees did what they needed to do, and if Lance Lynn pitches at all in the postseason for them and does even close to what he's done in the regular season, they'll take it. I'm not sold on Tyler Austin yet. There's some intrigue there. He's got, as I said on the radio the other day, I heard a clip of it, and I was like, ugh, you know how sometimes you hate hearing your own voice, even though you're used to it? I said, Tyler Austin is one of those guys who comes along every once in a while with crazy, stupid pop. And I'm like, was I making a movie pun there, or why did I say that? But he has crazy, stupid pop for whatever it's worth.
He does.
And
to all fields, by the way.
That's right. And the Rijo kid is actually an interesting pitching prospect as well. The Twins added 11 guys who I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, they're buying lottery tickets. We say that all the time on the Touch 'Em All podcast, but like some actual tickets. They're not just like 1,000,000-to-1 flyers. So I'm curious to see a number of those guys. But I don't remember what the question was.
Well, let's transition to this because Byron Buxton is a name that came up, and as of right now, it's still unclear as to whether or not he's going to be a September call-up. You've got this service time thing that the Twins would never talk about publicly.
He has to be a September call-up, right?
I agree.
Okay. I was getting ready for that.
No.
Knock him down, drag him out.
I agree. I think if you let him go 9 or 10 months from whenever the last time he faced Major League pitching was, sometime in June, I can't remember. But if you let him go 9 months without facing Major League pitching, I think that's a mistake. And I think also if you're playing the service time game, I understand it. If he were to break out at some point and become a consistent player, would you like to have him for the extra year? And we're just to clarify this, I want to say he has, if he's a Major League active roster guy for 13 days between now and the end of the year, he would trigger his next year of service time, which means he'd reach arbitration and free agency a year earlier than if you were to just not call him up and not start the clock until next year. But here's the thing: we don't even know if he's a he's a Major League outfielder. If you can't answer the question of whether he's a Major League hitter or not, this whole service time cat and mouse game is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So I would worry about, can he hit Major League pitching in September? And then the but to that would be, okay, what if he does? He's done that before. He's done that in 2 different Septembers where he's come up, and then the next season in April it looks like he's never faced a Major League pitcher before.
Sure. If you're playing the service time game, it'll be awfully disappointing because if you win that game, what's the win? The win is, okay, he is a superstar, and we do have him for another year that we can afford him. And now your superstar franchise cornerstone player hates you. And that's your fault.
You could frame it. All right,
you can't.
I'll play this side.
Okay, let's do this. Let's go down this road, because if you tell Buxton you're not coming up this September, I don't care how he's performed or how he perceives he's performed. In his mind, he's a Major League player.
So, well, of course.
And you're telling him he's not.
Of course, but I think the way you would frame it is twofold. Number one, Byron, it's been a rough season from an injury perspective. Yeah. We think your wrist isn't 100%. We want to give your wrist a break. Instead of putting you out there for another month, we want to make sure your wrist is healed. And number two, even though injuries have played a role, you just haven't been good enough. You haven't even been good enough at AAA. Yeah, you had a few good games, but look at, what is he hitting? 230 in AAA, and he's not getting on base
the other day, yeah.
So you could frame it from a performance perspective, and also, hey, we're going to protect you with this injury thing. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate
Right.
on the side that I wouldn't choose here.
Yeah.
I would call him up, and I would put him in center field as often as possible. Hopefully he doesn't run into a wall and knock himself unconscious. And I would see if he can hit.
If you do that, hopefully he does that wall unconscious bit before he gets 13 days of big league service time, right? You want to play that game?
Well, if you put him on the Major League DL, he would still...
He's still getting service time. I needed the one-liner in there. But I will say that the reason I don't think you play that game is simple. If you win that game, it's sort of... You lost one to win one.
Yeah.
And then he's the superstar. Great. Good for you that you saved a year of service time. But if you don't get it right, if you don't get his development on track, if at 25 you're still not sure if he's a fourth outfielder or a superstar, then this service time, this clocks game it doesn't matter. If he's not a superstar, it doesn't matter because he might not get to free agency. Yeah. If he is a superstar, you don't want him to have this bad taste in his mouth from the 2018 season that you exacerbated and compounded by not calling him up in September.
Yep.
Sometimes I can see sending a message to a guy in September, hey, you're a big prospect, Aaron Hicks, Brian Dozier, but you're not a September call-up. I understand that to a point, but with a guy who's already done it in the big leagues for multiple months in a row, I think it'd be a pretty tough sell to say, but the wrist.
The Twins, what was it Aaron Hicks? I'm trying to think of the scenario where their excuse was, it was the other way around, where Aaron Hicks got called up early, way earlier than he probably should have been, and I guess whatever, you can test the waters with the guy, but he stayed up for 2 months when it was obvious he couldn't hit.
Yeah, because they gave him the job over the winter.
And their reasoning for why they wouldn't send him back down was, we don't have anyone else to play center field. It's like, literally go claim anyone off waivers and stop ruining a guy's career.
Yeah.
But that was the old regime, and this is the new regime.
That was right after the Denard Span, Ben Revere trades.
And Darren Mastriani was on the DL with his annual hamstring injury or something. Yeah.
Sure.
Darren Mastriani, we should get him on the podcast. He lives in the Twin Cities.
Oh, yeah?
He frequents Bunnies in St. Louis Park.
No kidding.
Yeah, Judd, who also frequents Bunnies in St. Louis Park and other bars.
That'd be a fun guest.
Run into him and his, I don't know if he has family, but he'll run into him at the bar just chilling out, pounding wings and talking about the glory days.
Let's, I have nothing to add on the Darren Mastriani conversation.
You like pounding wings with reserve outfielders?
Let's rapid fire through some questions if there are any left in the chat, just so we can service the Facebook audience who's been loyal, hanging out this whole time. And, then we can call it a show.
Cool.
So, some of them are station-related, some of them are Twins-related.
Let's do it.
Jamie says, I will miss Mackie and Judd 9-1 while doing my delivery route. Good show.
We'll have more to announce on that. You'll still be able to listen to Mackie and Judd. We'll have more to announce on timing and different things.
You'll still be able to listen to it on your delivery route. Maybe not live.
It might not be the same hours.
Depends on your the timing of your route. Jamie also says, is Ventline gone? That was great.
No. Ventline is not gone. In fact, there's good news for Ventline.
If you're a Vikings
we'll announce
fan,
next week.
Or a Twins fan, or a Timberwolves fan, or a Gophers fan, I think you're really going to like some of the changes that are coming forth.
Agreed. Yes.
Peter says, thank you guys for your continued interaction, mainly on Twitter, but always being open to respond to my asinine tweets. So,
you're welcome.
To Peter May, you recognize the name. We've seen him around.
Thank you for engaging with our asinine tweets as well.
Yeah, speak for yourself. No comeback? You weren't gonna. I thought
Stoicism.
I was expecting
Stoicism.
I was expecting a left hook. Christopher says, Jimenez, he's just a guy. What do people think he's going to do to help the Twins win?
Well, not much.
It's not like he's on a 10-year contract. I wouldn't worry about him being the future of the Twins.
Yeah.
Catching position.
In fact, you could argue the Twins should tank to get a better draft pick. I mean, winning doesn't really. It's not really important when you're 15 games out.
Let's see here. Got a lot of guys talking about the deep V and chest hair combination.
Oh, do we have any more?
Chris Gimenez. No other names nominated. I was expecting to see a running list.
Ryan Domit, Mike Napoli is a big one. I mean, Mike Napoli, by the end of that run, is he still in the big leagues, by the way? Did he catch on somewhere?
Was he in Texas?
Okay.
Who was the pitcher? Did Carl Pavano go about halfway down the jersey in his final years in Minnesota?
Carl Pavano would change undershirts every inning because he would get so sweaty. That was definitely a thing. Every inning, he'd come out of the game, go into the clubhouse, change undershirts because he just had, I don't know if he had hyperhidrosis or I don't know what his
just diagnosing guys post playing career.
What his deal was.
Jeremy wants to know, what about Odo Rizzi? Is he back? I would think so. I would think next year you give him an arbitration raise and say back end rotation.
Do you non-tender him?
You could. I don't think he's been as bad as people think he's super frustrating to watch. But look at his numbers by the end of the season, and I don't think that's a non-tender candidate. I mean, he's not going to be that expensive given what he's done over the past this year and last.
It's not like your payroll is jammed going into next year. In fact, you have almost nobody on.
You can afford to do like what you did with who was the guy that they were going to fix this year? Anibal Sanchez. Mm-hmm. Okay, you give him a contract. For that, I was more of a spring tryout. But let's say you tender a contract to Odo Rizzi, and he's your 9th best starter in spring training. And you're just loaded up on depth with Clayton Kershaw and the rest of them, well, then you can cut him and no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
I'm not that worried about sort of mid to back end rotation starter depth for the Twins. Bring back Escobar. Greg wants to know if the Twins bring him back next year.
I mean, last I had heard, was because this was around the trade deadline, that he would be very interested in coming back to the Twins. Who knows what these last few weeks hold for him, and he's going to have all kinds of options. Anyone who can hit like that and play that many positions is going to get 10 teams knocking on his door minimum during the wintertime.
Hopefully he gets a nice little playoff run with the Snakes. Gibson 3-45, this is what Jeremy says. Gibson 3-45 with a $6 million arbitration premium. 3-45 for Kyle Gibson. I'll take his next 3 seasons at 15 per.
I would too. It's a little bit of a gamble because you're banking on one new year of Kyle Gibson, and let's say 6 starts at the end of last year, 8 starts. You're banking on him taking this over into a 3-year stretch and throwing away the first 5 years of his mediocre career.
12 starts at the end of last year and all of this year. I'll re-raise on Kyle Gibson. I'd be willing to give him more than that, but what concerns me, you're always worried about...
Okay, Terry Ryan. Let's let Phil Hughes prove it. Let's let Phil Hughes prove it for one more year.
All I'm concerned about with any pitcher extension, it'd be the same if I approach Jose Barrios this winter and say, do you want a big deal, son? It would be injury. Pitcher injury is a constant risk that you can't mitigate, and you have to swim in those waters. Yeah. Ernest says Aaron Hicks looking great. You're right, but in another uniform. Then let's see. Mike Grimes says my delivery route goes from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. I think you have a decent chance of hearing the Mackey and Judd show without giving away too much.
You will hear the Mackey and Judd show between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. In fact, we're just going to rerun the whole thing. It'll just be 12 hours. Rerun we're going to just be live for 12. If you thought 4 hours was long.
The old Pat joke of the show's still going 4 hours later.
And they were still on the air.
You guys tripled down on that. And Brian Sandy, this is the last comment in the Facebook, says, always enjoy having some good baseball talk.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
We enjoy you guys watching and listening to us.
I appreciate the good questions. We get them every single week. We fire one of these up. I'm going to try to get Phil on more often. I'm going to try to get other guests in here for the Facebook show. So, yeah, if you're following along on Facebook, you're in the right spot. If you're listening on the podcast, find me on Facebook, Derek Wetmore, MLB. And those are all of the cheap plugs that I have to give out. Do you have any more that you need to say other than announcements forthcoming?
Do you want to give a plug for whatever mousse or hair gel you've been using these days?
No, I'm not using any hair gel. It's natural.
That's natural flow?
Mm-hmm.
-2.
Getting ready. I keep telling people getting ready for hockey season. Just a couple months early. But
see how the top of my head actually radiates light upward toward the ceiling?
I see it on the camera. It's not like that in real life.
Yeah. Put a lid on it here.
Getting ready for the beauty league. That's all I got. That's all we have for this Twins video. More podcasts coming, definitely, but we wanted to get on here and explain to you guys why it's been a little bit slower this summer, and especially over the last month or so. that's it for me. For Phil Mackey, Derek Wetmore, thanks for coming by, guys. Appreciate it.
This is Stephanie March, food editor of Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine, and fellow foodies, it's the most wonderful time of the year, the Minnesota State Fair. And not only are foods on a stick, I'm bringing you a podcast on a stick. It's a show released daily during the run of the fair, covering the fair's best of the best, the must-eats, the new foods, the old favorites, plus events, hidden gems, and the shows you can't miss. We're going to cover it all. Just listen to Podcasts on a Stick. Find episodes on the Podcast One app or wherever you find your podcasts.
ADT can design and install a smart home just for you, backed by 24/7 protection. A new smart home at your service, customized for your lifestyle. Set up custom automations unique to your home to automatically do the things like lock the doors or set the thermostat when you leave. Even close your garage door from virtually anywhere. ADT will set up your home with multiple smart home devices and security features like indoor and outdoor cameras, locks, lights, and garage door control, even video doorbells. Visit ADT.com/smart to learn more about how ADT can design and install a secure smart home just for you.
Aretha Franklin's funeral. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. Aretha Franklin is remembered as the Queen of Soul at her funeral in Detroit. Gladys Knight, one of the many taking part today.
Walk on through the wind.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson says she was one for the ages.
Aretha was our queen. She belonged and belongs to us. She was blessed to have the powerful gift of singing, perhaps the most remarkable voice, unique the world has ever heard.
In Washington, people paying their respects, saying goodbye to John McCain as the Vietnam hero, longtime senator, lies in state at the U.S. Capitol. McCain's funeral is tomorrow at Washington National Cathedral. Actress Vanessa Marquez, who appeared on the TV medical drama ER and starred in the film Stand and Deliver, was fatally shot yesterday by police officers in South Pasadena, California, after she reportedly pointed a BB gun that looked like a handgun at them. I'm Tim McGuire.